New year, new government, but does that mean a new outlook for the property sector? We sit down with Savills Malaysia Executive Chairman Datuk Christopher Boyd to ask about his property outlook for 2019, whether it is a good year to buy and what to watch out for. Could you give us, in broad strokes, your general outlook for the property market this year, in both in terms of like residential and commercial, because it's been a very interesting year. 2018 was a really interesting year, a year of two halves almost. So what does 2019 look like?
If you go back to last year, of course the major event was the general election, and it took at least 2 months, I think, for the euphoria to wear off a little bit, and we all realized in the property industry that there's no such thing as fairy dust. And to really predict the market going forward, you just have to recognize that market forces will prevail, and you have to look at the supply and demand figures. So in the residential market, we're at a position now where we have about 36,000 unsold residential units,
yes,
of all type, of all stripe,
yes,
Sohos, landed, and so forth. And unsold means really unsold, completed and not sold.
And just waiting empty.
And just waiting empty, yeah. Total value about 24 billion ringgit. So that is a lot. And then during the second half of last year, that number continued to rise. So obviously that amount of residential stock has to work its way through the market, and it will. On the commercial side, we are just about to become the biggest market in Southeast Asia. We've got about 123 million square feet of office space. Once we've pipped Hong Kong, which has 127, and that won't take very long, then we will be the biggest market by far. Head and shoulders above Singapore, Bangkok and Manila.
That honor that we are going to pip Hong Kong, in the biggest supply. But is that honor very dubious? Because just because you have a lot doesn't mean you can fill a lot.
Yes, I mean, unfortunately, we don't have the same economic activity as Hong Kong. I wish we did. But we did see a fair amount of activity in the office market last year. Savills leased hundreds of thousands of square feet to IT companies, banks, and of course the new co-working companies, giants like WeWorks, who made their debut into the Malaysian market. And so are low rentals really a bad thing? I mean, they do encourage companies to upgrade, particularly. And the other thing to bear in mind is that if house prices go down as well as up, that is really true market forces at work. So we can seek some consolation in the fact that the residential market can and will eventually right itself.
Okay.
Although things may get a little tougher before they get better.
What trends will Savills see for the housing market? Because I think what a lot of people have said is that developers build a lot of very pretty things, but are they really listening to their customers?
In many cases, if you look at our built landscape right now, you wonder whether they really are listening, or even listening to their wives.
Oh dear.
But in terms of trends, for 2019, the market is moving in different directions. Some of them are very interesting. I think once the economy reaches a degree of stabilization, it's quite possible that the federal government will take a greater stake in the build-to-let market. The obvious problem with build-to-let is that it's just barely economically viable. You don't get a reasonable return on your capital. But if the federal government can somehow or other engineer cheap or free land, then that changes the dynamics entirely.
What are the big challenges to look out for? We talked about supply and demand, developers maybe not listening to their wives in terms of some design, but what are the other big challenges to look out for?
Well, I think the single biggest challenge in the Malaysian market now, and something we need badly, is a restoration of confidence in the capital markets. Because we have, I think, progress of the economy is held back. People are waiting to see exactly how this change in the political landscape is going to work out. So my wish for this year is political stability, financial stability, and a focus on increasing the return on capital and human capital.
What are the hot new areas, you think?
There are probably hot old areas that you should look at. You know, there is a phenomenon where values sort of radiate out from the center being Golden Triangle. And then investors will revisit the older areas. So, you know, Kepong, Sentul, okay, they've had a bad rap in the past, but comparatively speaking, there are bargains to be had there. I think some of these inner city areas are looking very, very interesting now.
So with all the new measures that the new government has come for, like homeowners, what do you think this impact will be on the housing market? New government, new measures, new way of doing things.
If and when end finance becomes more easily available, there will be an almost instantaneous effect on the market, positive. If people can borrow the money, they will buy. Other measures, such as an increase in real property gains tax, are of course stamp duty, a bit of a downer, as they say, yeah. By and large, I don't think the impact is going to be huge, but it's not particularly positive.